Hello, welcome to Cinnamon Babe Horror Stories. I'm Cinnamon Babe, and every Friday I discuss creepy topics while I do my makeup. So please like and subscribe, and please enjoy the video. Hey, so it is October 24th. It is Thursday. Next week is Halloween, and I am wearing a Wonder Woman corset. And basically, I'll be taking my kids trick-or-treating at a college today, so that'll be super fun. But let's get into the video. The LaLaurie Mansion is located on 1140 Royal Street, and it is considered one of the most haunted houses in New Orleans. That is because there was a lot of bloodshed, a lot of suffering and torment taking place in that house. The story of the house begins with a woman named Madame Delphine LaLaurie, also known as Madame LaLaurie. Marie was born March 19th, 1787, during the Spanish colonial period in New Orleans. Marie's parents were Louis and Marie McCarty, and they were originally from Ireland, but they decided to relocate to New Orleans. Marie's parents were prominent in the European Creole society, and they were high class, and Marie and her four siblings were basically raised wealthy and comfortable. Marie's cousin was the mayor of New Orleans in 1815, and her uncle was the governor of the Spanish American provinces of Louisiana and Florida. So Marie grew up during a time of the Haitian Revolution. She was about 4 years old, and that was a time when a lot of slave owners began to fear their slaves because there was a lot of revolts going on. And so due to that fear and paranoia, a lot of the slave owners, unfortunately, started to really abuse and crack down on their slaves and just do cruel and unusual punishments to their slaves just to strike fear into them, because they were just so afraid that, the slaves were going to stand up for themselves and face their oppressors. So that was one of their biggest fears, which they should have been afraid, because the way they were treating them to begin with was always just disgusting and horrible. So in 1771, Marie's uncle, the governor of Florida and Louisiana, ended up getting assassinated by his slaves. And so, like I said, Marie grew up with this natural and taught hate against slaves, and seeing them being abused by family members, seeing them be abused by people in her community, I believe that struck in her an unnatural belief system towards the slaves as human beings. And so I don't think she looked at them the same way that she would look at anybody else in the community. I think that, like most people from her generation, I believe that she felt that they were lower than her and also less than human. So June 11th, 1800, at the age of 13, Marie ended up marrying Ron Angelo, a Royal Spanish officer, and she ended up getting pregnant, and then just 4 years after their marriage, he ended up getting in a boat crash and passing away, and she ended up giving birth to their first child, Marie Angelo. 4 years later, at the age of 21, Marie remarries in 1808 to Jean Plank. He is a legislator, he is a banker, he is a lawyer, he's a merchant, he's very wealthy, and together they have 4 children. But Jean would then pass away at 1816. So by the 1820s, Marie was a young, popular socialite in New Orleans in her community. She was young, she was attractive, she was successful, and she was known for throwing and attending lavish parties, and she pretty much had a good reputation in her community. So by June 5th, 1825, Marie would end up marrying her third and final husband, whose name was Leonard Lewis, and he was 15 years younger than her, and he was a wealthy doctor. So in 1831, the couple bought a property at, I don't know why I just said it like that, a property at 1140 Royal Street, basically the famous property today in New Orleans. And in 1832, the couple built a 2-story mansion complete with the slave quarters, and Marie and her husband and 2 of her daughters moved into the property. By then, Marie had owned at least 78 slaves in her adult lifetime, but I'm unclear how many of them she moved into the slave quarters in her mansion. Marie and her husband, Leonard, started to have marital issues. Marie claimed that he was making it very difficult for her to cohabitate with him. And she also claimed that he was physically abusive, so she petitioned in the courts for them to have a legal separation, but that ended up being temporary because they remained married. So although Marie and whoever she was married to during her time as an adult had a wonderful reputation, she was successful and just had a lot going for herself, she had a sinister secret that she was keeping from her community. So in 1831, rumors began to spread about Marie's treatment of her slaves. Members of the community have stated that when they would look at her slaves, they would see that they were haggard and wretched and sickly and just unkept. They didn't, you could clearly see that something was terribly wrong. Because for a wealthy woman, with a beautiful, clean home, a mansion, and, financial success, usually when you see women like that of that time, or families like that of that time, their slaves were well kept and they were well dressed and they looked healthy and they looked better than, slaves that were working out in the field and stuff. These were house slaves living in the city. So in comparison to other slaves in the community, these slaves, they looked really bad. They looked really sick and just terribly kept. With the rumors just spreading and spreading, Marie tried her best to fake the appearance that she treated her slaves kindly. She would, in the public eye, if she was out in public, she would show her slaves kindness and seemed polite and would offer them things in front of people, at parties and stuff, and just tried to seem like a nice person, she was nice to her slaves. But the rumors kept spreading because, like I said, the slaves appeared as something was terribly wrong, and it got to the point where the public had a lawyer dispatched to her home to investigate the condition of her slaves. And she was, of course, able to manipulate him into believing that she was harmless and that her slaves were just fine. And so he just basically wrote in his report that, this woman couldn't hurt a fly, that this woman couldn't hurt a fly. And, I don't even know why anybody's saying these things about her because she's just so kind and refined and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So the rumors continued to spread regardless. And in 1836, it has been reported that Marie was seen chasing a young slave girl around the property with a whip in her hand. And the little girl looked frightened and terrified, and it was seen that she had either been pushed or jumped from the roof of the property of the mansion. And come to find out, the little girl's name was Leah, and she was 12 years old, and she was brushing Marie's hair, and she had hit a snag while she was brushing it. And Marie got furious and began chasing her around with the whip. And to get away from her, it is believed that little Leah, either fell trying to get away from her or Marie pushed her, but it's unproven which way or the other. And it is also reported that they seen the child's body being buried on the property outside. But this incident led to another investigation, and Marie and her family were found guilty of cruel treatment of their slaves, and she was forced to relinquish 9 of her slaves and sell them, but all she did was just sell them to family members, and she ended up getting the slaves right back and just moved them right back into the property. So it is said that Marie owned a 70-year-old woman slave, and she was her cook. And so instead of allowing the woman to sleep in a bed and to be treated like a human being, she forced the woman to be chained by the ankle to the oven in the kitchen and would starve and beat her. And whenever Marie's daughters would try to ease up on the poor woman and unchain her, they would too be beaten. So Marie still felt like she had control over her dark and sinister secret that she was hiding inside of her home. That is until April 10th of 1834, a fire broke out at the mansion, and it started in the kitchen where the 70-year-old woman slave was chained to the oven, and it was purposely started by the woman. She wanted to either end her suffering or basically get attention to the house to escape. Like, she was just done with the situation, obviously. So the fire marshals arrived at the scene, and when they got into the kitchen area to stop the fire, they found the cook chained there, and she had survived. And she explained that she had started the fire because she was afraid of being further punished, and she said that when slaves went to the uppermost room of the mansion, they would never return out alive, and so she feared for her life. Also, bystanders who had noticed the fire tried to render aid to basically free anybody that was left in the house, particularly the slaves, because they knew that she had multiple slaves in the home, and Marie would not give them the key to open the door. And so they had to kick down the door, and when they kicked down the door, all they could smell was the smell of rotting flesh and death. And what they saw is seriously out of a nightmare. They entered the slave quarters. What they saw was 7 slaves cuffed by their necks with iron cuffs around their neck, their arms stretched and hanging by their arms and limbs. They said that you could tell that many of them had been there for months, and that there was one woman she was an older woman slave, and she had a giant unattended gash on her head. There were slaves that had their stomachs cut open and their intestines were tied around their waist intentionally. Oh my gosh, this is so horrible. There was a female slave that had her mouth sewn shut, and inside her mouth was feces. Just horrible, just sadistic, disgusting. I don't even know what to say. That's just horrible. And there was a male slave who had a hole drilled into his skull, and sticking out of the hole was a wooden spoon, and it was believed that was to stir his brain as a torture device. It just I don't even know how do people come up with such terrible things. And then multiple slaves had broken and reset bones that had been broken, reset, almost like an experiment. In fact, there had been a couple just deranged and sadistic experiments that were done on the poor slaves. There was a woman whose legs were reset and rearranged to make her walk as though she was a crab. How? Why? Oh, it makes me so mad. I even heard one time that there was one male slave that had an unprofessional experimental sex reassignment surgery done on him, and someone had reported about that as well, and I just find that to be so deranged and terrible. And then other torture things that they would do is cover the poor slaves with honey and black ants as a torture method. So you would think at this point that the slaves would be saved and freed and rendered aid and treated kindly for the rest of their days, but instead they were gladly removed from the home, and they were placed in front of the police station, and they were put on display. And at least 4,000 people of the community came to basically witness and see what Marie had done to the slaves, and many of them did not survive their injuries. It is unclear how many slaves were murdered and tortured inside of the mansion, but according to the funeral records, there were 12 bodies that were removed from the home from 1830 to 1834. And there had also been numerous bodies that were excavated from the property as well. So, and it include elderly and children, which is just beyond words. Of course, due to Marie and her husband Leonard's wealth, there were no charges that were immediately brought to them. And they, of course, did not seem to have any remorse, because when Marie's husband Leonard was asked about the situation, he says people should just stay home and not meddle in other people's business and not try to enforce law on other people in other people's homes. Pretty much some bull crap. He didn't care. It didn't make any difference to him because, like I said, or her, because, like I said, I believe that they had an unnatural view towards black people, the slaves. They didn't see them as 100% human beings. They didn't see them as people with feelings, and they didn't see the value in them as human beings, which is just, I don't even know what to say. It's just so horrible and infuriating. So pretty much when the news had spread about what Marie and her family had done to the innocent people that were forced to be slaves in her home, it was a public outrage, and a large mob ended up coming to the mansion, and they destroyed everything that the fire didn't. They completely destroyed everything. And while they were doing that, I guess Marie was able to escape, and she first went to Alabama, and then she got on a boat and fled to Paris, France, in exile, where she stayed with her mother and two of her sisters. So in that time, Marie basically faded into obscurity. Nobody really knew what happened to her, and yeah, basically she had pretty much got away with it in her lifetime, but it is believed her cause of death was due to during a hunting trip in France. They believe that she was mauled by a wild boar, which that would be a great fate for her. She really deserves like a medieval torture treatment, pretty much what she was doing to the innocent people in her home. But so, like I said, no one really knew what happened to her. That is until 1924. Someone ended up discovering her death plaque in New Orleans, and it is believed that her ashes were returned to New Orleans, and her time of death or date was December 7th, 1849. So the home ended up getting rebuilt pretty much like a replica. It has been used as a conservatory for music. It has been used for a high school. It has been used for a bar, a store, and a luxury apartment building. In 2007, Nicolas Cage, the actor, he ended up buying it for $3.45 million or something like that. And it ultimately ended up being sold to a bank, and then I think in 2023 to someone named Michael Wallen. If you watch the hit TV show American Horror Story, you will see Kathy Bates portraying Madame LaLaurie or Marie in that, and so that's interesting. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I will end up watching that. I don't know. And a couple novels have also been written about the horrific events, the torture, about Marie, just pretty much about the entire situation. A couple novels have come out as well. So of course today the house is currently a museum that you can visit, and of course it is haunted from all the horrible and terrible things that took place, and pretty much the traditional experiences people report: doors slamming, footsteps, they hear moaning from the slave quarters, and they feel just terrible energy when they're there. So Marie Delphine McCarty will forever be known as a sadistic murderer and torturer. She is also believed to be America's first female serial killer. And I just want to say that Although it appears that she had gotten away with everything she had done, the truth is no one really gets away with anything in this life. You can do horrible, terrible things to other people and to yourself while you're alive on earth, but I believe when you pass away, you're going to have to be confronted with the Lord Almighty, and you're going to have to answer for every horrible, terrible thing that you have done to others, and you will be severely punished. And I also believe, and I also want to say that everyone that is tormented and treated badly in this life will be comforted, especially if they know Jesus. And I also want to say that yes, you can go visit the mansion, but one thing I would like to say is just keep in mind that no one that lived there is haunting the place. That's not how it works. That place is infested with demonic entities, and everyone who was tormented and lost their life there have passed on to a greater, comfortable place, and they no longer have to suffer. And I feel like it is exploitive to say that it's the slaves that are haunting the place. And the reason why is because when you say that, you're putting them back on display like they were when they were put on display in front of the police station and 4,000 people came and looked at all their injuries. That's what you're doing when you say that. You're saying, oh, I'm coming here for entertainment like it's a scary movie and terrible, horrible things had happened. So just keep in mind that those people have passed on to a greater, wonderful place, and they no longer have to suffer. And the person that tormented them is accounted for, and she is being held accountable as we speak. That is what I believe, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video on next Friday.